Get it for a couple of days.
He says no reason. Go ahead with the others.
Please. Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Gelb.
Here.
Ogle.
Here.
Pacto.
Here.
Nolan.
Here.
Cahill.
Here.
George.
Here.
Scavo.
Here.
Feltner.
Here.
We have a quorum. Oh, and I apologize, I'm not dressed up. My wife's in the hospital, and I just came straight from there, so that's the reason for that. Now, let's talk about the agenda. It's been suggested that we move the board action and receive and file items up front because we have people in the audience who need to leave, and also we have one or more board members who needs to leave before the end of the meeting. So is that okay with everybody to start with, after doing the minutes, do the board action and the receive and file items?
I move approval of the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved as amended. Now let's talk about the minutes of the June meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any questions, comments, changes, additions, corrections, clarifications, or anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of the June meeting are approved. Next, we'll move on to item A for board action, the alcohol request at Greenwood Park.
Phil, can I interject real fast? There's a card going around for your wife.
Oh, great.
And hopefully everybody can sign it, wish her well, and perhaps you deliver it for us.
Oh, yeah, right after the meeting, sure, great.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's great. She'll appreciate that, and so do I. Okay, item A for board action, the alcohol request at Greenwood Park. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments, discussion? Are we ready to vote? Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
Gelb.
Yes.
Ogle.
Yes.
Pacto.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Cahill.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Scavo.
Yes.
Feltner.
Yes.
It is approved. Next, we'll move on to receive and file item B, the Hy-Vee Triathlon presentation.
Well, if you haven't heard, there's a tremendous event coming to town on Labor Day for the second year in a row back in Des Moines. It's the Hy-Vee Triathlon. They're here today to run you through a quick presentation, as well as Brian here to talk about how the Grays Lake Park and parts of the park operation may just be affected as part of this great opportunity for us to host this world-class event. Brian?
Chairman Galloway, members of Park and Recreation Board, Brian Becker, Park and Recreation Superintendent. I'm just here to introduce them. Two representatives we have is Darren Hurl and John Green.
As they're making their way up to the podium, I also want to point out that Candy Rindell, the assistant to the city manager, is in the front row. If you put your hand up. Candy actually organizes this event for the entire city because it is so many different departments involved in pulling this off. So she's here to listen as well. And Brian is our staff liaison to Candy to help out with park and recreation issues and reserving facilities and just diagnosis and logistics.
Good afternoon. Again, my name's Darren Hurl and John Brem. We're both with Hy-Vee.
I am the Director of Event Marketing for Hy-Vee, and I oversee the Hy-Vee Triathlon as well as some other events for Hy-Vee. I'm going to bring your attention here to a PowerPoint. And first of all, before I lead into this, I want to say, John and I both want to say thanks for the time today to bring this group up to speed on what's new with the Hy-Vee Triathlon, as well as what isn't new, which is what I like. Anything with no changes is great. Grays Lake, we'll start with Grays Lake. So we just wanted to go through the setup, when things will be happening down at the lake, and how that affects the city and obviously our citizens of the city. First of all, on Sunday, August 26th, our barricades will arrive. And on Monday, we'll be installing the bike racks and the fencing and signage on the south side. And I'll get to a map here in a second. And I also have some takeaways for you after the meeting. On Tuesday, we'll continue to put up barricades and fencing. Wednesday, ongoing. We'll put up quite a few barricades. As a matter of fact, it's in about 1,500 barricades throughout Des Moines that we're putting up, all for crowd control, mainly for the safety of both the athletes and our spectators. On Thursday, 8:30, we'll be completing the start-finish in the transition area on the south side. Friday, we'll be setting up for our Iron Kids U.S. Championship event. We have 14 races throughout 8 states, plus 4 other races around the United States. All those kids qualify then to come to Des Moines to race in the U.S. Championship on Saturday. And in the afternoon, those kids will be coming out, racking their bikes in transition, getting ready for the race on Saturday. Then that takes us to Saturday. Saturday in the morning, we'll have the Iron Kids race, and then in the afternoon, that's when our age groupers will start to show up and rack their bikes in transition for the triathlon the next day on Sunday. Obviously, race day. As soon as the last bike leaves Grays Lake out onto the bike course, we're already starting to do some minor teardown and get the park back to its normal condition. Once that last bike comes in and that runner goes out and works their way downtown to finish the state capitol, we're in full teardown mode. We're trying to get the fencing and the barricades out of there so we can get the park benches back, picnic tables back, trash cans back, and have the facility back to its normal conditions by the time we leave Sunday, so that it is clean and ready for business Monday morning. We started at the end, didn't we? Let me go through the maps. This just gives you an overview of Grays Lake itself. And I'll blow up the south side of Grays Lake here in a second where transition is. But I wanted to give you an overview first where they'll be entering the water on the south side and swimming a familiar course to what they swam last year. They'll just be entering and exiting on the south side versus the north side. And then their bike takes them on the ring road out to the river. Parking is on the south side in the railroad right-of-way. This is a closer view, and it's hard to read, and that's why I have some takeaways for you today. But transition is basically in that picnic area with the Iron Kids event on Saturday. The finish line is there, so they finish at Grays Lake instead of going up to the state capitol like we do for the adult race on Sunday. And again, all that parking now is on the railroad right-of-way to the south, which makes it very convenient for our athletes, our spectators, and especially handicap that are coming out to see both Saturday and Sunday's races. This is just another map, but this is Sunday, and there's just a few changes that we'll make internally, operationally, between Saturday and Sunday. Again, showing the swim, entering off the southeast corner, and then coming out what would be considered the old boat ramp.
Is that your professionals on Sunday you're talking about?
This is for the amateurs. So there's 2 races on Sunday morning. The first race is the Hy-Vee 5150 U.S. Championship, which that is one that you have to qualify to race in. The second one is the Hy-Vee Triathlon, which let's hope there's no need for contingency plans.
How does it work with, and this is well above my pay grade, but just out of curiosity, can they change the outflow of water from the dam to raise the level a couple of days before an event if it looked like that was going to be the case?
They can. As a matter of fact, Candy, sorry.
That's okay.
Candy and her team helped last year do just that, John. And we were able to work with the Army Corps of Engineers, the city was, to increase that outflow for us for race day. Other questions?
I do want to commend you on your professional setup and cleanup, and you bring a class back to Des Moines, and last year I was here for almost the entire event from Sunday morning till close, and your team does an amazing job.
Thank
It looks
you.
professional, and they treat our staff professionally as well, so.
Thank you.
Is it televised again?
I'm sorry?
Is it televised again?
It will be streamed online.
Okay.
And then we have 3 jumbotrons, one right by Simon Nestis and 2 up at the state capitol.
Can you talk a little bit about the entry in and out of Grays Lake, since we've just planted that area, how that's going to be handled?
Sure, I'm going to turn that over to John.
That sounds like a question right up my alley. Well, first of all, in the past, the triathlon has started as a mass start, so you'd have 30, 60, 100 people going in the water all at once. So because of the shoreline planting, we'd go to more of a time trial start, so you'd have 2 or 3 people at a time going down the banks. There'd be a lineup of athletes going into the water. So we're not tearing up a huge swath of the plantings that the city has gone to all the trouble to put down there. Right now, the plan is a 30-foot section for swim in, and that's probably the area where we'd have the most impact to plantings, if we're going to have any impact at all. The plan is to cover the plants temporarily while everybody's walking down to the water's edge, and then get that back off right away so the plants aren't suffocated. Swim out is a different matter. That's going up the old construction trail and boat ramp, which is compacted really hard and hasn't had a lot of plant germination establishment yet. And so we're going to be limiting the athletes to an 8-foot wide path as they come out of the water, and they'll be going up basically what's a road. It's a hard gravel, hard pan road that goes down to the lake's edge, and hasn't established very well as far as the plants are concerned, and we'll be in and out of there, of course, in one day, so shouldn't have a huge impact to the plants. If we do have an impact to the plants, Hy-Vee's willing to step up, and we'll make any repairs that are needed.
Do you anticipate doing the same
He was just talking about transition areas.
plan next year?
Our hope is to keep using the same site through the years.
And how is the access to the parking that's on the south side and the railroad line?
Parking will be handled, let me go back to the slide here.
Could you speak up just a little bit? I'm sorry, we
You
can't
bet,
hear
I'm
you.
sorry, I have a
Thanks.
cold, so I apologize, my voice
That's
is
fine,
kind of
thank
rough
you.
today. Parking is handled with the change of having our athletes have to go through Waterworks Park. Originally, the bridge on Ashworth that went, or I'm sorry, on Grand, that went over the, I think it's Raccoon River, onto 63rd Street, was planned to be closed. And so our original plans called for making some changes to the race route, and that included bringing bikes through Waterworks Park. Well, even though the project on the bridge has been delayed for a year, we like the new route that's come up, but it does bring bikes through Waterworks Park. And in the past, we've had approximately 1,100 or more vehicles parked in Waterworks Park for spectators and athletes parking. And with the race on the north side at the swim beach, we had an issue with bikes going out, spectators coming across Fleur Drive, getting into a bottleneck where the Raccoon River and Grays Lake come close together. So we had a safety issue there. We had a couple of spectators that came near to getting hit and some athletes that would have been knocked off their bikes, and they could have been injured as well. So for safety reasons, we're moving things to the south, and also secondarily for parking reasons, because of that safety concern, we want all our spectators and athletes to be parking to the south of Grays Lake in the old railroad right-of-way.
But how are you taking the people from the parking lot to?
We'll have our spectators, athletes come in off of Fleur Drive from the south, and help me out here, Darren, if I'm getting this wrong, but athletes from the north come around Thomas Beck, and they'll go on Bell, and then there's an access road, I think it's your first right on Bell, and you go under the bridge, and there's a driveway into the right-of-way, and we're planning on having all inbound traffic go one way down that access under the bridge into the right-of-way, buses, everybody that's coming down there would be directed to that point for entry only. And then they would be exiting out where the park entrance is on the south side by Thomas Beck Road. So it'd be one way out. So athletes and spectators, once they've seen their loved ones, their athletes start off on the race. They can jump in their cars and take Thomas Beck and walk up to the Capitol and see them at the finish. We're hoping this makes it easy to get athletes down there for checking in their bikes. It makes it easy for spectators to get in to see their loved ones and get out, and basically reduce the chaos that we've had in the past with 2 parking places and the issues going on at Fleur and up on the north end of the park. Hopefully that covers that for you. Other questions?
Just as a reminder, this is kind of an FYI. It's not coming back for board action. It's just kind of giving you an update. It's a programmatic thing. So I just want to make sure this is, you understand this is probably the last time for questions if you have any.
I guess I did have a question. At one point, I think I heard that this might be paved, that you wanted to pave this parking area. Is that not true or true? Or?
We never made the request to pave. What we did do is, pro bono, via me, put together a plan just to consider. It was just a concept for the city to look at, to think about, not a suggestion, not a request.
I see.
Just simply something, hey, maybe this is something to think about for our event, and there's the IMT Marathon, and there's a lot of other events down here that would benefit from the ability to park a greater number of vehicles somewhere in the vicinity of the park. So we threw out an idea, and that's been shelved as far as we're concerned.
Okay, thank you. And so as we're looking at it, that parking area you're using, it will not be, that isn't
Our
going to
intention
be
is not
paved.
to make it
Okay, thank you.
Major change to the park would come back to you to talk about that, as well as we would take some council action and engineering work and all that. So.
Other questions? Okay, great presentation, John and Dan. And also want to thank Candy for doing a super job with the city manager's office. So everybody gets a gold star.
There's takeaways for you later.
Oh, okay, super.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. Next, we'll move on to receive and file item C, the Meredith Neighborhood Sign Request.
Okay, today with us we have the Meredith Neighborhood Association President, William Schoenberger. Did I say that correctly? Great. And what we have today is a request to place a sign for the neighborhood into the park. And the design has been through the Public Art Foundation. It's been determined that it's not public art. And we're now at the point where we want to have this reviewed in front of the park board, and we gave you some staff information on the background here. So if you'd like to speak a little more.
Thank you, Chairman Galloway and members of the board. Thank you. I'm William Schoenberger. I live at 5131 Merced Street, Des Moines, Iowa. And as said, I'm president of the Meredith Neighborhood Association. A few years ago, we started looking at putting or installing, acquiring, all the above, a neighborhood sign to indicate this is the Meredith neighborhood, which is very common with the neighborhoods around the city of Des Moines. We were approached by a city council member and a couple other folks and said, well, if you're going to do this, can you consider that maybe elaborating on the sign and so that it has an art aspect to it, which would add value and to the area in many regards. We looked at some examples in other cities where they're doing this. Also, if you'll notice that Urbandale, I believe Clive, and some of the other cities have also started putting up art-type objects around the community to kind of spruce up the area, make it a little bit different. We also looked at from the standpoint of what is already established in Des Moines with the Gateway Park, and also there's a lot of other art objects around Des Moines. I'll give a plug for DSM Art, which is an app for cell phone, and where you can locate the various art objects around Des Moines. So in the process of doing this, we've had two tracks. One is what kind of sculptured sign, that's the official term, that we wanted to have with this, and I have a sample that I can show you on the camera here in a minute. And then secondly, where are we going to put it? Where would we like to put it? And we looked at several locations, and I think I even still have somebody in the neighborhood who's still looking for others. But when we looked at all the possible locations, one of the problems about the Meredith neighborhood, in case you don't know where it is, it's the very northwest corner of Des Moines. The southeast corner is Beaver and Douglas. The northeast corner is Beaver and Meredith Drive. The north boundary is the city limits along Meredith Drive, which goes both north and, well, sometimes it goes north of Meredith Drive over to Merle Hay Road, and then there's a strip that runs along Merle Hay Road. That's part of Des Moines, it's also part of Meredith. And then back down Merle Hay to Aurora, and then east back to 51st Street, and then south to Douglas and back over to Beaver. So it's kind of a different shape neighborhood. It's not rectangular. But we looked at all the options in terms of entryways into the neighborhood, whether it was Palm, Bel Air off of Beaver, looked at Meredith Drive in Beaver, looked at Beaver and Douglas. And each of those places are fairly well occupied by whatever's already there. Walgreens is on the corner of Beaver and Douglas, and Charles Gavis is on Merle Hay and Meredith Drive. Dulles is on Aurora and Merle Hay, and so on. And we looked at that. There was a piece of land that we really liked that is owned by Mid-America, and that's on the corner of 50th and Aurora. The difficulty is it's not quite large enough, but it might fit. The other problem is Mid-America already has cables running under the ground. And if we put something on top of it, one, we have to make sure the engineer not to interfere with the cables, but if they have to dig them up, we've got a problem. We have talked to Mid-America, and they're agreeable under conditions. But then when we met with neighborhood members, and one of the suggestions that came up was to use the edge of Westchester Park on 50th Street. Now, recognizing there's already two signs on that stretch. There's Westminster Church has a sign on their property, which is on the south end. And then on the north end, the Park and Rec has put a very nice, we like it, sign indicating Westchester Park. And in fact, we've already put flowers and grass around it. We think it's a pretty sign. So the question is now where we do it? Well, it's a long stretch. And what we're looking at, and would like to recommend, is that we place it along 50th Street on the Westchester Park property. And again, if you haven't been there, from the sidewalk to the park, there is an elevation. And it's a slope. And so it would be up elevated, up on the park. The other part is, what would it look like? And we've got a conceptual design. I'm not going to guarantee this is 100% the final one. And I'll show you where the possible changes are. It's two parts. There's a wall in the back. That's the sign, Meredith Neighborhood. And these are tiles on here. We can have these tiles be any color we want. We can put photographs on them, but we're looking at, this is the sign aspect, and we're looking at just good design. This is projected to be, and again, this can be adjusted, is to be in about, I think it's about 8 foot long and about 6 foot high. Now, clarification, we know this is going to be completely contrary to the city code on neighborhood signs. We're already aware of that. We know about it. We know that Board of Adjustment is going to be involved in probably the city board or the city council. This particular item is roughly 30 to 40 inches wide, and then this would be approximately 18 to 20 feet high. And this portion right here, I think would be in the 3 foot height range. And that gives us the artistic side of it, whatever. We're still doing a little work is what all this is. We're pretty sure it's going to be abstract like this, multicolor. The material will be a metal that's, I'm not using the right term, but it's the same type of painting system you use on cars to put the paint on so it's durable. It's fixable. We recognize that vandalism is going to be an issue, and we want something that can easily be cleaned up or fixed. Also, we want something that's long-term. Now, the other part to this, we're going to have to raise some money. This is not the typical $5,000, $6,000 neighborhood sign. This is going to be more in the $30,000 range. So we're going to have to raise money for it, and one of the incentives for doing that is on this portion right here is selling either 4x4 or 6x6 tiles that people can use either for memorials, for a picture of the neighborhood or whatever, and then there would be some kind of a donation that would generate them. Let's see. Oh, in the fundraising, one of the critical factors that we're very sensitive to is that whatever we raise, there has to be a certain amount reserved for long-term maintenance. This is not something we put it in and then forget about it. There has to be a way of funding this. Now, who owns it afterwards? We're open. We've had that discussion. I met with the staff at city managers and with the city attorney that represents this area, and we just left it up however it works out best for everybody. The bottom line is that we want something that identifies the Meredith neighborhood. At the same time, it enhances where it's located, and it's something that the city would appreciate and what our neighborhood would appreciate. Again, we want to tie it into what's going on in the rest of Des Moines with sculptures. And quite honestly, I do know of 2 or 3 other neighborhoods that are holding back and watching to see what happens on this particular initiative because they may be interested in doing the same thing. So I'm going to stop at that point, take questions if I could.
Is there really a brick wall behind that, or is that just where they sat?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. Say that would be a very big
Let's
brick
see
wall.
here. Let's try this one.
Oh, there you go.
How's that work? I wanted to use this one because it's a little larger, so it showed up there. But yeah, what it is, the model that is in these pictures is only about this tall, and when we first took pictures of it, there was a brick wall behind it. But it's safe to say this is photoshopped onto the park, and just so you can kind of get an idea. If you're curious, these are the donation amounts and as to what people can donate. We have set up an agreement with the Foundation for Greater Des Moines. I think I said that right. And they're actually going to do the collections and pay the bills and take care of all the the notifications on donations and stuff. We're a volunteer organization, and something like this would be just a little overwhelming. We are a 501(c)(3), but we still felt that we needed to have the foundation assist us in doing the more of the technical side in terms, and then also you can contribute online. Be more than happy to have anybody do that. But it's under the Meredith sculpture.
You had any discussions with your neighborhood association board about the idea of this sculpture in a park and the fact that kids love to play on things, whether it's meant to be an attraction to play on or not, and what kind of risk that would have?
Yes, we have talked about that, and that's still some of the discussion we're going to have. Another aspect to this is because we are proposing to put memorial information on the object. We have an added burden or an added step to go through with ADA. And we'll be working with I can't remember which group it is in the city, but to make sure that is that with you, okay. But we know that that's yet another step. We do have a commitment for engineering design on this so that we're sure that, because the foundations and all that stuff, that all has to meet code. And then, and of course, then we still have to go through all the other steps. But 88 is a question. We don't know what the answer is yet, but it is something that we do need to look at. We have had proposals, and I don't think that's in our final plan, is to actually have a sort of a brick area right in here, you know, for people to walk on. I don't think that that will be the final. I'm pretty sure that that won't be final, because that'll add to the cost, and then also I think it'll affect some other things. And yes, we did talk about, because we do have neighborhood kids and they do play at the park. And one thing that we have talked about is using solar lights, solar generated or powered lights, so that we can illuminate parts of this at night in the evening. 50th Street's pretty well lit in the evening, but you know, still put just a little light on it so that it's visible and you can see what's going on. But we have had some problems in the past with vandalism at the Westchester Park shelter, but the last 2 years has actually been quite good. We seem to be able to address those issues.
I just want to point out to the board that this is a really important decision for you, because this is almost precedent setting as you have requests like this. And nothing against the Meredith Neighborhood Association. They've been an excellent partner of ours in the past. They do great work in the park. They volunteer a lot, like many other neighborhoods. You're going to have parks that share jurisdictional boundaries with two neighborhoods right down the middle. So you could have a park sign, a neighborhood sign, a neighborhood sign. And so I just want to make sure you understand the value of the decision you're making here, and make sure it's well thought out, what you always do a good job of. And once again, not to discourage you from a partnership of some sort, but just to think about those things as you have your discussion today.
Yeah, if I can add on that, we actually were thinking first the northwest corner of Westchester Park, but Park and Rec put a real nice sign there, so we really don't want to interfere with that. Yeah, and that's the reason we're looking at somewhere in the middle, so that we're away from the other two signs. But anyway, but we're going through the, you know, as I mentioned, we're starting the process now. I've met with the city staff from the city, from the city, and again, we also have the letter from the Art Council indicating it is a sculptured sign, and they're saying fine, go with it. So, in fact, I think I sent a copy.
They've determined, it's, just to clarify, they've determined it's not public art.
Right. It's a custom-made sign and not a public art project requiring further action of the Park Public Art Foundation.
Okay, other questions for Bill?
Well, this isn't necessarily for Bill, but in the information we received, it suggested that we've got to change park board policy.
Well, right now, we believe there is probably some kind of a loophole that we need to tie together with the city, not just parks, but other neighborhoods, as Mr. Schoenberger noticed all of us, that there's variance issues for different signage issues, and that we don't have the same rules on park property as a city right-of-way, for example. So we should discuss, as part of the further long-term solution, to have a policy in place, how to react to these things, rather than case by case. This is your second one in about a year. We had one at the Grandview Golf Course, if you remember that one, that's still being privately fundraised for. Looks real familiar to this one as far as the design look, as far as the flowers parts.
There's some, yes.
Yes. Is it the same artist?
Same artist,
Okay.
yes. And actually, there's some collaboration on the fundraising between the two of us.
That's kind of what we were thinking.
Other questions for Bill?
Not for Bill, I guess, but do we have any, do we move forward at all until they determine the proper size of the sign? I mean, they're going beyond the limits right now, so, I mean, do we have any decisions to be making yet?
I think it's helpful to let the neighborhood know what the park board's thinking, because they probably wouldn't go down the path to request a variance, and, you know, that costs money to be in front of the Board of Adjustment. Right. So they kind of would like to start here first to know where you're at.
Yeah. Part of the reason I'm a little giving estimates on the size is because I know that before this is all said and done, for one reason or another, it might be the wall may have to be a little shorter, because I know the current law, I think, is it's a 4x8 sign, but it can be elevated, but it's still, the sign itself is 4x8.
But the height being 18 feet, that's
for the
quite a change.
For the flower, that is definitely a variance, and we're well aware of that. And we've already had those discussions with a variety of people just to alert them to the fact that this is coming. And that particular part of it, since that's more of the art side of it, you know, that's something we'd have to talk about. As far as the wall's concerned, I think there's probably going to be some limitations due to the base and some of the engineering to be able to put that in. So these are the outside dimensions. And again, provided by the artist who, you know, reality sinks in and we may have to do a little smaller scale. But we can definitely allow for that. But anyway we do this is a variance of the city ordinance on signs.
I think what I'm hearing here, and of course, the board members stop me, is that, you know, we're caught in an awkward position. Not only you are too, as a neighborhood association, and we want to value and cherish our relationships with the neighborhoods because those are our end users. But we also feel like we need tools and policy in place to be able to react to these things. And, you know, it would be my recommendation to have you draft a letter to the city council saying this is before you, and it needs to be acted upon quickly because they're out there wanting to do something in the near future to say, here's what our concerns are, and here's what we believe to be some of the loopholes. And maybe in a quick, short order, we could come together and figure out a path of how this could work, or maybe does not work either way.
If I could add, we don't see the timeline on this being anything, you won't see this year.
Okay.
That's
helpful.
We recognize that there's enough steps, and the very thing that you talked about is changes by the city council, that we know that that's going to take some time, and we want to make sure this is all done right. So we don't see this happening. And then we have to raise the funds also, and that's going to take some time.
We certainly appreciate that because this is new territory for this group as well.
I do know better than to come in and say, I've got to have it next week.
Okay, other questions for Bill?
I just had a comment, I think. First of all, I really applaud you and your neighborhood association because obviously you have put a ton of work into this.
Thank you.
And I think the neighborhood associations are kind of the backbone of the city, and it's so important to us.
We like to think so.
Yeah, and I think it's nice that you want to identify yourself. As a member of the park board, I just have a comment. I think, to my knowledge, so far we have not put a neighborhood association sign within one of our parks. And I could be wrong about that. We have our own signs, as you said. And yeah, I agree with you. I think they're pretty nice too. But I think we did that because we wanted to indicate that this was a city park and that it was available to everyone.
Correct.
And my concern with starting the precedent of putting any, no matter how lovely it is or how much people work on it, by putting any neighborhood association sign in a city park versus a right-of-way, a public right-of-way or a public space, that I think that precedent is important because we value the green space that we all have, and we want everybody to feel all over Des Moines that it's their park. And so I personally hate to establish the precedence of having any neighborhood association sign in a city park. I'd rather still have it in public right-of-way, like you mentioned, Mid-Am's property.
Well, that wouldn't be public right-of-way, that's their property.
Or their property, private property, or open space. And I think then everybody can enjoy it. But the reason we did work on those signs for the public, for our parks, is to indicate that that belongs to everybody. So it's just more, it has nothing to do with your design or your sign. And then my other point is there are, I think, 2 situations in the city that I identified that 3 neighborhood associations butt up to 1 park. So theoretically, you could have 3 different neighborhood association signs in that park. And so I just make that observation. That gives me pause. And so I would really appreciate it if we could look for a place that isn't within the boundaries of the park.
Yeah, actually, be very blunt, we tried desperately to find someplace else. that would appropriate, that would fit right away in the neighborhood, around the neighborhood, on the edges of the neighborhood is thin. It's not quite wide enough. In fact, it wouldn't even meet, in some cases, the code, the existing code, or it would be a piece of land that nobody drives by. But we did desperate, like I said, we looked at all along Merle Hay Road, and there are places along there with right-of-way, but it's, you gotta remember, this is a neighborhood sign, and while those businesses on Merle Hay are part of our neighborhood, you don't see the houses when you see the sign. You see the businesses, which is okay, but part of what we want to do is indicate that this is primarily a residential area, and part of the sign is to say this is our neighborhood, which includes all of this. We've looked on Douglas. There is a piece of property that is being developed right now. They've built an office building. It's set back quite a ways, but they already have plans for another building that's going to be much closer to Douglas. And again, the parking, you know, that would be too thin for us to put something in. And of course, any place else, we looked along Beaver, even with the new construction on Beaver Avenue, when it's all done, we would still have some problems with finding an area big enough even for a standard sign. We even looked at the islands that we have on Palm and Bel Air that we maintain. And because of the construction on Beaver, they're being redone, they're being rebuilt, and they're going to be smaller than they were. And so we've even looked at that.
So you'd either have to size down or...
Well, even if we size down, you still have certain requirements, setback and everything else with the city code in terms of how far back from the sidewalk the sign has to be and so on and so forth.
Well, as volunteers, boy, you've done a lot, but I just did need to tell you that that is and will be my concern about
when we
that.
talked with legal staff, with the city manager, that was brought up in a slightly different vein, but it's still the same. To use the term that was used there was the branding of the park, is that this is, I'll give you an example. This is one that I had kind of contained myself, as one of your board members would know. They wanted to put it on the northwest corner of the Hoover High School yard. And there's a great big pine tree there. And so it would really be wonderful coming down Aurora Avenue, see a big sign that says Meredith Neighborhood, Hoover High School, because Meredith Junior High or Middle School is on the south side. And there would be some, I think that would be a real branding problem. But the other thing is, there is a memorial tree right on the corner that would be, and that gets a little dicey when you start suggesting to somebody, we're going to cut down your tree that somebody planted 20 years ago as a memorial. It can be done. I've been in school districts where you can, but you got to be, yeah.
Well, hopefully...
That adds another element.
Hopefully you can work together with city staff as you proceed on this and kind of go away from a park, because we just really haven't done that.
Yeah,
But
I understand that.
thank you. It was a great presentation, and wish you luck trying to find a place.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll have some discussion, but first, is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved. Second.
Okay, now we can have a board discussion. Who wants to go first?
I don't quite understand how we proceed.
Well, we can just discuss first and then decide how to proceed.
Because it doesn't seem like we have enough specifics really to be judging. I mean, the size seems way out of proportion to what has been acceptable any place, let alone in a park. We don't really know the safety of the piece. I mean, I think there are so many unknowns that we're dealing with that I'm having, besides Paula's, suggestions that it isn't appropriate in the park. I mean, there's lots of other things that we just don't know.
Okay.
Do we have rules and regulations existing on signage at all? Or is that what we need to?
In the parks, we really don't have a policy for this type of request. And that's where we need to develop one. And there's no real tried and true right or wrong answer here. It's how we determine the usability of the parks as we go forward. It's a lot of interaction of safety. It's branding. It's all the things. And then more importantly is, once again, one of you said it earlier, was to be really careful with our neighborhood relationships. These are the people that we work very hard with in and out, and we don't want Meredith Neighborhood Association or any neighborhood association leaving here tonight feeling like this is a park department against a neighborhood department issue. It's not. We want to work together to have the best managed parks in a most responsible way.
Mary?
I guess my comment would be that I really agree with what Paula had to say, and rather than dealing with this kind of an issue on a case-by-case basis, I think we do have to develop a policy and, as a park board, come to a conclusion about, number one, our neighborhood association signs or any other kind of sign besides this is a park sign appropriate in our parks. We have to answer that first, and I don't think that's something we're prepared to do here today by any means. And, you know, and then we can, once we answer that question, if it's yes or no, then we can move forward and be consistent citywide with how we approach requests like this, rather than knee-jerk, case-by-case basis.
Right, it does sound like there's more situations in the pipeline that are waiting to come along afterwards. So.
For us to generate income to get more amenities into the park.
There may be a compromise, to use the word lightly, that we're working, and I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse here, but we're working as an ad hoc committee on proposal of sponsorship program ideas as well as adopt the park ideas. Maybe there's a way that we could partner with the Meredith Neighborhood Association and try to come together with a design we all like and feel that we could use in other parks too, and that we could recognize those that want to adopt the park or to sponsor the park. Still, another project that's on the front burner right now that we're trying to work through, and we don't have any idea how that will pan out at this point, but we want to consider that too, to have in the back of your minds as you make your decisions.
To me, that just makes it all that much more important that, you know, we figure this out, because otherwise we're going to end up with 14 signs in our park, and it'll be Meredith Neighborhood Association, you know, Hy-Vee, this, and we're going to go, where'd Westminster Park go? So I think we really need to maybe create, I agree that it's related to that, but it's a different issue. And I'd hate to merge those two, frankly.
Other comments? Okay, my own personal feelings, I'd like to look at it, separate the sign from the artwork. The artwork I just don't particularly care for. I hate to see that springing up in parks all over town, unless that was what the park board wanted to do, to have that be our brand, so to speak. Sign, that's an easier sell, especially if Meredith Neighborhood would adopt the park to help out with something there, because we do already have some precedent for that in other parks where a Boy Scout troop or something will pick up litter and so forth, and then they are recognized as part of the sign. Beaverdale Park comes to mind, for instance. So there's things that can be worked out there, but I do agree that we ought to have a policy so we're not just doing this one at a time and inconsistently.
And with some of our sponsorship ideas, I didn't think we were looking at it being a permanent situation. That was going to be for a set period of time, so I don't think it would quite be appropriate in this situation.
Yeah, and any of that would probably be on a park sign, not a sign for a neighborhood association, so.
So what's our next step? Do we get together a committee to determine the policy? And
Well, I think there's a couple steps. One would be let staff research this and see if there's any other issues like this in other cities.
That's what I
But an interim step might be, I suggested earlier, maybe a letter to the city council just to be fair to the neighborhood, to keep them going so they can know if they need to move off of the park and go to a different property or if there's any opportunity.
The same artist.
Once again, the city council is the end game on these decisions, so we need to make sure we keep that moving. I think you should articulate your thoughts.
They haven't raised the money, the golf
So
course.
would it be fair to say that relative to this request from the Meredith Neighborhood Association, that the park board lacking a policy relative to that cannot endorse having the sign in the park at this particular time, that we would be creating a committee to develop, a policy that would address these kinds of issues moving forward?
What does everybody think about that?
I would support it.
See a lot of nodding
Yeah.
heads.
well, I have some somewhat mixed feelings. I felt like this came to us with so many unanswered questions in it. I'm wondering why it came to us even, because some of these issues haven't been resolved. And I'm wondering, Ben, you're mentioning going to city council if we go through all the motions of doing this, and the city council in the end says, no, we're not doing this because we're not having these different kinds of signs all over the city and we're not opening this door. Maybe they need to be the ones that resolve this before we spend a lot of time spinning our wheels on something that might get turned down the road anyway.
I think what Ben said, let really, staff do some research and to search, from other states to see how they handle it and bring some examples back so we can review it. Otherwise, I cannot make a decision out of the blue.
Well, the only management tool we have is reactionary for this type of proposal. We don't have a policy in place, and we wanted it to be fair once again to the neighborhood, is to at least get in front of this board as soon as possible. We actually took it to the executive board meeting too to make sure that we had the right path, and they said, no, you'll have the right path, just bring it forward to have this discussion, and I think that's the best route. I think there's merit on all comments that I've heard here tonight, and I think that we should communicate your feelings sooner than later, even though you don't have all the details. Each and every sign will be different too, and I think you just need to take it as a conceptual idea of, do you want this type of signage in the parks, yes or no, in the future? If the council comes back and tells you yes, then you need to define a policy. If no, then you still have a little bit of policy too, to understand that as you give staff the tool to react to these, so we don't have to come to the council or to park board meetings.
I think as we're moving forward with our Urban Conservation Committee in particular, we're looking at more and more the greening of the city and the greening of the parks. And so I think the park board really does have to make a decision on this. I mean, do we want more signage in the park instead of more green space and more environmental?
Okay, well.
I think we have more vested in it than maybe the city council does.
Okay, of course, we're just receiving the filing today. We're not voting for board action, either yay or nay. But it kind of sounds like maybe we should have a committee take a look at this. Is that the sense I'm getting?
Do you want a separate committee, Joe, or do you just want to send it back to the executive committee? And let the executive committee work this out and decide whether you need the letter to city council or more questions from staff.
That would be fine with me. And of course, anybody can come to the executive committee.
Makes sense.
So if you want to be involved in this and you're not officially a member, you can come to the meeting anyway, participate, just like any other meeting. Okay. So I guess we really don't need to vote on that. We'll just have the executive committee deal with this at their next meeting and report back with the following park board meeting. Okay.
Sounds good.
Any other comments?
And that way, too, staff can bring us any other suggestions or ideas they have, too, at that time.
Right. Because this isn't, I mean, as he suggested, they've got a lot of hoops to hop through before it would ever even get to city council, right? Is this
Correct.
true?
And that's what it sounds like. I mean, they have a couple of board of adjustment, so one board of adjustment meeting, but they can't go there until they hear from you. I mean, it wouldn't be a good practice. They would spend money that they wouldn't have to spend if it was denied by your group.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready to vote on the receive and file? Again, this is not a yea or a nay on the merits of the idea, it's just to say that we received and filed it. And we'll proceed with the committee as we discussed. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. And we'll proceed as we discussed. Thank you, Bill.
Bill, our department will keep you updated as we progress through this. So I'll be contacting you as we have other updates available.
Okay, next we'll move on to receive and file item D. Glendale, I'll probably butcher the name here, Columbarian
Yes, Columbarian.
Project Spotlight.
We have two staff members here coming up to make a presentation. It's once in a while I use this part of your agenda as a park spotlight, and I think it's great to expand it when we have a significant project. This project was approved recently. I'll just kind of set the table for these two to take over, but this is a project that went to council recently and it was approved. And what it is a new Columbarian project. In our world, you're going to hear in our industry of cemetery operations that this is not a trend. It's the future of the choice, at least the overwhelming choice right now for burial options. And we're going to move forward here with Marlene and Lee Wheelock.
Marlene Anderson, Park and Recreation Supervisor, and one of my responsibilities is manager of the Des Moines Municipal Cemeteries. First of all, what Lee Wheelock, Park Planner, and I will be telling you about today are two major projects that are now underway at Glendale Cemetery to generate additional revenue in an increasing cemetery market segment, which is the interment of cremains. I do want to explain to you that in addition to educating myself in my new position of cemetery manager, it is a goal of mine to also familiarize this Park and Recreation Board about the operations of the cemeteries and the importance of the cemeteries to our citizens. So therefore, we're spending this time today in this effort, and repeatedly in the future too. I want to explain to you that cremains burial options are certainly nothing new to the Des Moines Municipal Cemeteries. Many of the in-ground crypts in the Des Moines' forefathers are interred in Woodland Cemetery and have been in that position in those cemeteries for well over 100 years. Glendale Abbey, the abbey located in Glendale Cemetery, was established in 1912 and has not only above-ground crypts for full body interment, but also cremains niches. So this is nothing new. It's just that it's becoming an increasing option in the nation, and people like baby boomers, which many of us are among that population, are causing it to become an ever popular choice. So when I first started with the cemeteries, it was startling actually to me that 40% of the people in the nation are now choosing cremain burial rather than full body interment in the cemeteries. In the Des Moines Municipal Cemeteries, we have 29% of our interments in the average of the last 3 years. That's 179 average, and that is 29% of our interments in the cemeteries are currently in the form of cremains. We'd like the number to increase to closer match that national average, and in order to do that, though, we need to build additional infrastructure. Before going further, I do want to explain to you that our cemeteries offer 3 different types of cremains interments. An interment is different than a burial. I want to explain to you. All the burials are interments, and so are the encasement, if you will, of all human remains. So the in-ground burials of, or urns or containers is the most frequent, as you can see by the percentage. 85% on the average for the last 3 years have chosen to be interred in the ground. And people can do that either if they already have an interment of a full body grave. They can choose to have cremains added to that grave site in a container or urn or something of that nature. Also, they can purchase a burial lot just for that purpose, to have 1 or 2 sets of cremains buried there. That's available in 6 of our cemeteries. The exception is Sims Cemetery, which is not currently open for interments. The second type is the interment of cremains in niches, in individual containers or urns, in above-ground spaces, and they're generally in a structure called a columbarium. And there are generally several niches in that columbarium. We have columbarium only at Glendale and Laurel Hill cemeteries. Laurel Hill's columbarium was the most recently built, and that was in 2006, and it has 13 of the 48 remaining available. Glendale's first structure was built in 2002. We now have a total of 168 units, and all of them are sold out. When I started in January, we had only 4 niches left, and so immediately we started in the process of developing these 2 projects. And so now they're in the process of being built, and that's why we're here to talk to you about that today. The third type that I wanted to just mention to you is the interment of cremains in a scattering area. And the people are able to scatter them in a floral bed or some sort of a planting area. We have a monument structure that holds about 115 or so, has leaves on 2 sides in which the inscription of a person's loved one is made for them as a part of that interment and a part of that purchase. That's in a very prominent position as you come into the cemeteries. I don't know how familiar you are with Glendale Cemetery. As you come into the cemetery, it has been facing you, and it's no surprise. You've already heard me talking in tours and things of that nature that, of course, the most prominent positions are the ones that have been selling and are sold out. So on that structure, you would see that of the 55 or so on the what was formerly the front side are sold. On the formerly back side, only 5 or 6 are sold, and the rest remain available. So the reason I'm referring to that as formerly is that within the last month, we have picked up that monument structure and rotated it 90 degrees, and now there is no front and no back. There are 2 sides to the monument, and this will activate the sales on that other side. The total cost for that was a new pad of concrete for $1,200 and a $150 bill from the monument company to pick it up and move it and pick it up and put it back in place. So for $1,500, we're able to activate that revenue source too. Today, in particular, we're here to discuss the new developments. In addition, that is a new development, but we've got 2 columbarium structures that we're building, and Lee and I really felt that maybe we needed to familiarize you with the terminology that we're using before we go too much further. A columbarium is a structure with recesses in the walls or in the column to receive ashes, as is explained on our diagram here. Then within that columbarium structure are recesses of varying sizes that might hold 1 urn or 2 urns or even more urns than that. And then the urn is a container holding ashes. Frankly, some of them are more of a box. In the existing columbarium that we have, they are copper rectangular objects, and we can inter 1 or 2 of them in the spaces. And we provide those, and it does mandate that we use, the structure itself requires that we use the urns that we have available. And we actually, our staff inters them in that urn. Today, we want to talk, as I mentioned earlier, about two structures. The first one I will describe, and that is a new columbarium in Block K, which is a very prominent area of the Glendale Cemetery. It was, the infrastructure was built originally so that it would accommodate 4 columbarium. This is the fourth and last columbarium that we will be adding in that area. It is on order right now, and because we already have the structure, it will not require a lot of construction costs at all. We will only be putting in place a concrete plinth, which is the pad that you see those columbariums on, just like the sculptures at the sculpture park are on plinths, as you learned when we were dealing with that project a couple of years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago now. And the cost for that structure is $18,000. And that includes not just the unit itself, but also the shipping and all of the urns that will go in that structure, as well as the monument company actually coming to install it after we have the concrete in place. Now, Lee is going to tell you about a second project, which is under contract to be constructed by late this fall.
Before Lee begins, I just want to make a point that what you're about to see here was designed internally by our internal park planning division. During the budget process, we had a few comments asking what park planners did and do we have too many of them, and I'll tell you right now that we don't have enough of them. And this is a project that we would have paid easily, probably the value of Lee's salary to have designed for us. So once again, we're doing a lot of our own work in-house here when it comes to this high-level design, and it's a beautiful design. I hope you feel the same as I do about this. Go ahead, Lee.
As Marlene said, the second of our 2 columbarium projects is Lakeview Columbarium. It has a capacity of 1,136 urns, and we have called it Lakeview because anywhere you stand in the new columbarium area, you have a view of our lake at Glendale Cemetery. Give you a little indication of where the project is. You can see Glendale Cemetery just above University Avenue and Waveland Golf Course. The lake is listed there, the veterans area, the Abbey, the office. It shows Lakeview location right in the center inside the circle, the white circle. And it also shows at the top Block K Tower location, which Marlene had discussed previously, is just off the top of the image there. And it shows you sort of where these 2 structures are going to be built. I'm going to show you sort of this again in a very short video, I think is my next slide. So we will quick go out of here. And I'll explain as it runs here. It's running. It pauses at times to show different things. Again, this is the same location map you saw earlier. I'll try and get my laser pointer. The Abbey's here, the office was there, the entrances are here. This is the road that currently goes around the GAR section, the old veterans area up front here. It's not in good condition, so we plan to refurbish it as part of this project, which we would have refurbished outside of, other paving projects in the cemetery.
Could you point at the screen? It might be easier for the board.
Okay, yeah.
They have their screens in front of them right here.
Maybe the mouse will work while it moves.
Thank you.
You can see the structure is a 2-wall columbarium project, each having 2 sides apiece, so there's 4 total sides. The niches are covered in mahogany granite on the front. The lighter colored material is a precast concrete, and the pavement, the ground level pavement, is going to be a standard concrete. The road will be an asphalt road. You can see as the video goes around that the slope from the plaza goes from high and gradually ramps down through the whole project, eliminating the need for stairs for ADA access. And like I said before, it's loaded on both sides. We did need to compensate for some steep slopes, so we put in a planting at each end of the wall. It also helps aesthetically break up the design with a little bit of vegetation. The design is an Art Deco, early 1930s period architecture, and it also matches several other structures. Oops, didn't stop. I want to pause. Matches other structures in the cemetery along the period. I wonder if pause is there. There it is. This is the scene I wanted to show you. You saw a circle in the very back of the structure, or the very bottom of the structure, and that accesses, or is going to act as a node to connect to what we plan to the future build out of Glendale's front lawn and pond area or lake area. And you can see in this, we have future plans for other columbarium projects here, and I'll let the video go a little further. There it goes. And you can sort of see that we do have plans for the rest of the front lawn, and this is essentially our first step into those plans. You can see other columbarium structures here, 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 and this one would be a matching structure as such. It has walking paths, it has memorial benches, it ties the whole front lawn together, and it also allows us to capitalize our highest dollar for our highest value land in the cemetery, which is right up front with a pond view. That's always the highest dollar stuff, and I think we have put forth a plan that maximizes our ability to inter people here. We'll go out of the video and back to the presentation. Next slide. These are similar scenes that you saw in the video. I'll go through them quickly. The asphalt refurbished road, the ramp down the columbarium project. This is where the future sidewalk will connect to the rest of the lawn development. Four-sided columbarium. It's another view looking sort of back towards the office, sort of the easterly direction. Shows the two sides, shows slight grade change. You can see that even though she stands here between the two walls, she can see over the wall, towards the pond. Again, the pond or lake view. This is a close-up of what the structure details look like. Like I said, precast is the lighter color and a burgundy-colored granite. And that's the individual openings that will hold the niches behind them. Here's what the structure will actually look like. This is showing a round decorative urn. We also mentioned that the square urns come. 2 urns will fit into each niche. They're a 12-inch by 12-inch opening. The reason we went this method is the small opening will save us staff costs during interment. The previous structure we have, the towers in Glendale, you have to take off a very large piece of granite. It takes several staff members, and when you take it off, it also exposes 3 other niches. They're not completely open. They have a plate in front of them, but they are open at the same time. So this will also increase individual privacy during the interment. It'll allow the individual to place the urn inside of the niche themselves. And like I said, previous structure requires 4 niches to be open at once. This is what the names will look. You can barely see the name on the bottom, but there are 2 names there. This is showing that we recommend that there'll have to be a paint that's put into the engraving itself to make it visible, and it'll help the names kind of pop, and you'll be able to see them very nicely on the front of the structure. Some quick stats: 284 niches per wall, 568 niches to the total structure here. A 12 by 12 capable of holding 2 urns each. That leaves us with 1,136 urns. It's going to take us around $368,000 to build this structure, and we have an estimated net gross revenue of $750,000. That does not include additional interments, so if you place 1 niche in at one time, you buy the niche. There's a small other cost to inter a second urn at another time. But yeah, it has a high potential to generate quite a bit of revenue, and at current or at previous niche sale rates, I think this columbarium can last us around 6 plus or minus years for how this will fill out. Any other questions you have on this structure?
How long did you say it was going to take to fill that?
To fill it?
Yeah.
Plus or minus 6 years.
6?
Using our current rate.
We're not quite sure.
We really don't know for sure. It's only a projection, and that would be based on the fact that when the first structure was built at Glendale Cemetery in 2002, it had 72 units, and that pretty much sold out in 2 years. And of course, that was 10 years ago, and the trend has really skyrocketed since then for the change in the majority of the cremations, or in the interments, in full body versus cremations. So we really anticipate that there will be an early sale volume because a lot of the people who purchased in 2002 are not yet interred, you understand. That's a pre-sale type of situation. So really, although we just have been running out and our numbers have not been so high in the last 3 years, as you can tell by the percentage, a lot of that is because we really didn't have much to offer in regard to this, to the structure.
All right, my next question would be, you've spent a little bit over, what, $300,000 is our plan projected for this? How much did we put back into Glendale Cemetery for infrastructure this year? The existing infrastructure, in my understanding out there, is less than adequate, should we say?
This is what we're doing, is putting infrastructure into the cemetery.
Okay.
So
Let me
in
take this one,
comparison
Marlene.
to this,
What
okay.
I think Vince is asking us is, what's our capital improvement program? I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I'll get that to you. We are making an active push to put cemeteries forward sooner. It's been a balancing act in the past, as you may understand, with all the needs.
Yeah, I understand.
But you know that, and the roads need some upgrading. But one thing we're really working on right now is our tree infrastructure. We've been working very closely with David Yon, municipal arborist, doing a lot of tree work. We just did $50,000, which we estimated, which the bids came in lower than that, but that's what we estimated. We completed $50,000 worth of work, which came in underneath that bid. But we are making a push.
And what about water for, I mean, because what I hear about and what I see is older parts of the cemetery and the lack of water being available for people that are out there, and that kind of, you know, those kind of infrastructure things that exist in most of our cemeteries have been a problem. And I realize when we go to vote, or when we put our budgets forth as individuals on this board, most of us don't put a lot of money towards our cemetery use, and I understand that, and I commend you for doing this, and you know, but I also understand that we have an obligation for those folks that are already interred there to provide some kind of upgraded service so they can at least go and take care of their loved ones' sites.
Well, we do take great pride in how we maintain the facilities with the limited resources we do have. The water issue, let me handle that one first. We did get an estimate, and the water lines, as you can imagine, are very old there, and it was well over 6 figures to fix the water lines, and with limited resources, we felt that we should put our money into other areas, such as roads, when we could achieve the water solution, not perfectly, but by doing what we call water barrels. There's water barrels placed throughout the entire cemetery where you walk up and you can fuel up, and we fill those each morning, on the weekends especially, to make sure there is water available. Once again, it's not the most desirable solution, but it does work, and it does save those dollars to go to other cosmetic things as well as infrastructure items that we want to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions?
I was just going to comment on the fact that with each sale, a certain percentage is required by law to be set aside.
Right, you'll remember that this group, a process was initiated earlier this year where the required amount by the state of Iowa is that 20% of every lot sale is set aside into a perpetual fund, perpetual maintenance fund. And that had changed to 30% of the city's own choice in the early 1990s. And then now, just this year, it has been returned to the required 20%. And that's set aside and not available for operations of the cemeteries. Only the earnings of that money is allowed to be used, and that is incorporated into the operating budget of the cemeteries.
And the rationale for changing it was because of the limited resources from that fund, because you were only allowed to use the earnings, the interest.
Correct.
And so it freed up money that we could then put back into the cemeteries that otherwise we were going to be restricted by state law.
Only for operations, though, not for capital improvements.
Yeah, only for operations.
Yep. Your memory is correct.
And you really, you know, I sit on the cemetery committee, and until you bring in revenue, which we're looking at, this is going to gain some revenue, and I think with the baby boomer generation moving forward, these sales are this is going to be the way to move. I'm really pleased with the design of everything that's been put together, understanding that our cemeteries are all in need of repair, and it's working toward spending to make money kind of thing in some ways. And this includes that road which exists today, which is part of the repair.
That's right. So Lee did mention that there are two roads that are in major need of repair. Actually, the Public Works Department came into Glendale, well, actually into three of the cemeteries, Woodland, Laurel Hill, and Glendale Cemetery in May with two crews that worked 3 full days in street repair in the cemeteries. And they were really able to take care of a lot of the potholes and just basic things. There are 2 crumbling roadways in Glendale Cemetery, and this project that Lee has described addresses one of them. It's a complete replacement of the roadway in the GAR section. And so we have yet one more project that it's our hope to be able to now, with this year's this year's CIP budget, to be able to take care of that roadway too. So those are the 2 major roadway needs in Glendale in particular. And then we have addressed potholes and things in all of the very active cemeteries this year. And then Marion, you had a question?
I'm just curious how a full body burial compares to a niche in terms of price.
In the pond area, well, first of all, I guess I'll say that the price range is between $600 and $1,550 for a lot. And the lot, a $600 lot is an at-need. So in other words, it's in an area, a section that we have determined is an at-need section. And it's much like you would find in the veterans section, where the interments are in a chronological order. In other words, it fills as we have burials, okay? And so a person does not select their location. And then the highest price is overlooking the lake view. And that is the $1,550 cost. And so likewise, what we have seen in the columbarium that we already have is that despite the fact that these people are cremated, it's important to the family to have a pond or a lake view. So those sides sell more readily than the others. And so I've described to you previously the flexible pricing that we'll be having. So you can understand that of these 568 units, there might be 8 different pricings on these various units, according to which ones are around the perimeter, which ones are the highest, which ones are the lowest, which ones are on the lake side, and which ones are standing facing the lake and things of that nature. So we will be coming to you within the next couple of months with pricing for these structures. And that's very important for us to update the pricing, which has not been done since 2008. Right, so.
Any other questions?
I'm just going to make another comment. We also have an adopt a plot program with the cemeteries, and any organization or group or neighborhood or people who want to get together and adopt some of these areas and keep them clean. I know we're talking about it in Northeast Neighbors about doing something with Laurel Hill, so I think that people need to know that that's an option too, to go out and help just keep some of the headstones cleaned off and do some things that don't require major work.
Thanks for bringing that up, Suzette. We do have not only the Adopt a Plot program, which is where an individual or a group can adopt an area of the cemetery to pick up limbs and litter that they might see and help us with the removal of the grave ornaments that are put out there by families. We do that 3 times a year. But also, we have an average of 3 to 4 groups that range anywhere from 4 or 5 people to 300 or 400 people that we had over the Memorial Day holiday for a church that donated time over a 5-day period of time, that donate time for varying projects. And those projects range from cutting out the volunteer trees and things that grow around monuments to writing down the inscriptions on the stones in some of our very oldest cemeteries that have stones dating back into the 1860s and 70s. And so that helps us with the records these cemeteries have come to us by way of default. Some of them, 4 of the 7 cemeteries were not established by the city of Des Moines. And they came to us because the former owners were financially struggling or could no longer maintain those cemeteries. And so one was a former church cemetery. As you can all picture, a country cemetery with a cemetery next to it. The church burned, the congregation moved elsewhere, and the cemetery was there landlocked in a neighborhood on the south side, close to Marion. And then another one was,
Marlene,
we actually got from the
We kind of need to pick up the pace
Indian
here.
Affairs, right. So we have lots of work to be done. People are no longer going out there to do that.
Can I add one quick thing? I was happy to see the labyrinth maintenance work.
That's one of the projects. Remember that I mentioned to you that it would need to be a volunteer effort probably, that we wouldn't be able to dedicate staff to that. And so it was the volunteer group over Memorial Day that raised all of those bricks to reestablish the path in the labyrinth.
That was nice to see.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm glad you've noticed it and been out there to see it. Thank you very much.
Okay, great job, Marlene and Lee. Gold stars for both of you. Is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. Now we'll move to Ben's report.
You know, with the permission of the board, I can thin down at least one item for sure. I can bring back the Did You Know on the Rose Garden for next month. It's a quick presentation, but it is a presentation, and you can maybe help us limit this if you need to be anywhere. We can probably run through the rest of it in about 15 minutes or less if we remove that item. But if you want to hear about it, I'm glad to run through it too with you.
Just tell the public, I think, the date of the Rose Garden. I was thinking of yeah, okay, sorry.
So we'll bring that one, Did You Know, back? Okay. If the staff would just kind of get in our little bit of a lineup, and as you come up here, if you just make sure you announce which one you're talking about, because we're not always in order with who's talking about what, but we'll have Tiva do all hers first.
Good evening, Park Recreation Board members. Joe Galloway, Chairman of the Board. I'm Tiva Dawson, Recreation Manager, and I'm going to run through these fairly quickly. We just have a lot of upcoming events that I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of. First one, this is not necessarily in chronological order, which I'm sorry about that. We partner with a bunch of area paddlers and the Central Iowa Paddlers in an event called the River Run Garbage Grab, otherwise known as R2G2. And it's just a way to try and get people to embrace the rivers and get out in the rivers or in adjoining land areas and clean them up. So paddlers come out in their boats, people bring motorboats, and then those who don't want to get in the water actually do land-based cleanup. They've brought out a huge amount of trash in last years, and just want to let you know that we're looking for volunteers, and it's a great partnership that we do to embrace our rivers.
What's the date of that?
August 25th.
Oh, thank you.
And we could email those out to you, too, if that's helpful. As many of you are aware, we have the Star Party coming up. This is in celebration of the Persed meteor shower. You'll see it starts at 6. We're not sure. It's open in terms of ending time. You're welcome to be able to stay all night. The peak time is early in the morning, kind of between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning. Lots of different programs that we're offering, including showing the movie Spaceballs. And we are opening up spots for people to be able to put up a tent and be able to stay there all night long. And those funds will go to restore the lilacs and the arboretum. Yeah. Another one that we're doing, I think you've heard some hints about, is the 63rd Street Trail opening. This is actually celebrating the completion of the 63rd Street Trail connection that links West Des Moines with Des Moines. This will now have connecting 15 miles of trail between 88th Street and West Des Moines and downtown.
Just real quickly on this one, that's a great partnership between two communities. The city of Des Moines provided the engineering costs, while the city of West Des Moines provided the actual hard cost to build this. So come out if you can, help celebrate that.
I do have a handout I'll share with you shortly on that.
And one other point about that, Des Moines has lots of trails, you already knew that. West Des Moines has lots of trails, you already knew that. But believe it or not, the two systems didn't have a connection until this. So this is a unique connection.
So it'll be a fun kind of ceremony between the two communities to bring them together.
We had conflicting dates here. Yeah. August 2nd or August 1st.
Oh, sorry.
Wednesday, it's the Wednesday day.
No, which one is it?
Thank you.
First is a Wednesday? Sorry about that. We'll send out new ones for you. Everybody's checking their calendar.
I can redo that and email it out.
It's the same day as the golf committee, that's why I remembered. So,
And Julie will be back next month to talk to you about the Rose Garden, and so you can learn a little bit more about it. But we do try and have an annual event to celebrate the Rose Garden, bring public out for some activities, and to learn more about the space there. So that's coming up in later September. National Night Out is a partnership with the Parks Department, the Police Department, and neighbors throughout the community, trying to sort of recognize what we can all do to make our outdoors more safe. I think we are partnering this year with 14 different neighborhoods that are hosting their National Night Out in the parks of, I think, over 30 that are celebrating the National Night Out. I think some of them are moving indoors. They're afraid of the heat because we've had consecutive hot years. But just so you know which ones are happening in our parks, they will be at Accent, Brook Run, Ashfield, Burke, Nolan Plaza, Drake, Columbus, Martin Luther King Jr. Park, McHenry, Prospect, Greenwood, Jordan, Chamberlain, and Westchester. So it's great exposure for our parks and a good partnership with the police department as well.
Okay, thanks, Tiva. Any questions for Tiva? Okay, good report.
Back in regard to the Woodland Arch dedication, if you've gone by Woodland Cemetery in the last 2 weeks, you would have seen that the gates to the cemetery have been removed, and this project is in process also. Today, they began to take the capstones off of the 2 pillars, the ones that say Woodland, and there will be infrastructure added to those pillars to support and give wind protection, so to speak, to that arch. And it should be completed by the middle of the first week in August. There was a bit of a delay in the fabrication of the arch itself, and so it was actually targeted for completion this week, but now the contractor has told us it'll be another week and a half. Originally, we were planning to have a dedication in August, and because we were expecting the completion at the end of July, and Mr. LeBlanc, Gerald LeBlanc, who is certainly the champion of this cemetery and actually the person to whom this arch is being dedicated, has asked, he doesn't really know that yet, that it's being dedicated to him, but he has asked if we would move this dedication event to the middle of September, latter part of September, so that and I doubt that he's watching this board meeting tonight, frankly. But if he wanted us to move it to the last part of September, and those 2 weekends are the Sherman Hill Walking Tour, and so it would complement those 2 weekends of events. So it'll be on one or the other. We'll let you know the date.
Okay. Thanks, Marlene.
Chairman Galloway, members of the Park and Recreation Board, Jennifer Fletcher. I'm here to give you a quick update on the Don't Be Trashy project. We're finalizing the purchasing process to get a production company in place. Hope to have that done within the next few days, and we can begin production on the video next week. So everything willing, we can have something for you next month in front of the full board. In terms of the dispensers for the park system, I'm working with our team to get an actual model, and if we don't find one we want, then I think we can produce it in-house and have those out in the park system hopefully within the next 2 months. So, any questions?
I've asked Jen to scale back the investment into this campaign because we really had very little, 1 or 2 comments about trash in the parks. I think we've done a nice job handling it. There's not been any complaints that I know of other than one person that wanted a can back and we put that one back. But everything's going well, so I didn't want to put a lot of money into a project that didn't seem like it needed at this point. So we're going to focus on the video and the dispensers and the shelters that have a little message on about helping us with the trash.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jen.
Well, before Ron speaks, let me introduce, this is Ron Ward, our new parks manager. He's been on the job 2 weeks and 2 days. And now we have him already working hard. He'll tell you a little bit about his background quick, and he has two topics tonight to cover.
Well, Chairman Galloway, members of the Des Moines Park and Recreation Board, as Ben said, I'm Ron Ward, Park Manager, and I'm here to give you an update on the Greenwood Park Pond. Mid-Iowa Fountain Services has been contracted to furnish, install, and maintain a diffused aeration system. The system will have 4 aerification stations in the bottom of the pond. The electric power supply will come from the metal bridge on that west side of the pond. There's a junction box existing there now. The purchase price of the equipment is $4,950. The annual maintenance, the annual routine service and maintenance is $1,200 a year. The installation is planned for early next month, and this plan was reviewed and agreed to by the Founders Garden Club and the Des Moines Art Center. And the only other thing I'd say is this is a temporary solution for the duckweed. A permanent solution will be down the road. We'll have to work on improving the management of the stormwater in that area that all runs into that pond.
Before you step back, tell me a little bit about yourself and your years in the profession.
I've been in Parks and Recreation for basically 30 years. I graduated from Ball State University, and from there I went and I was a county park manager for 6 years. Then I went to work for the city of Elkhart, Indiana for 17 years. I was the assistant park director in charge of all the maintenance of all those facilities. And then 6.5 years ago, I came to Johnston and I started out there, parks were under Public Works. I was the park superintendent with the idea of working towards becoming a department. And in 2008, we became a Park and Recreation Department, and I became the director. So I was the Park and Recreation Director there for 4 years before you guys brought me here. So looking forward to working here and all the challenges that I keep learning about.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Questions for Ron? Okay, thanks, Ron. Glad you're on board.
Thank you.
Chairman Galloway, member of the Park and Recreation Board, Brian Becker, Park and Recreation Superintendent. Last month, the Road Runners Club of America, the oldest and longest running organization in the United States, announced that Des Moines had been selected as a runner-friendly community. For Des Moines to receive this award, it had to meet the program's criteria, which included infrastructure that fosters physical activity along with community and government support for running. Receiving this award is a great testament to the quality of the Des Moines facilities and trail system, and it also highlights the strength of the relationship between the running community and the city.
That's great news, Brian. Thanks.
There's 3 items left. They're all mine. I'll just hit them briefly and have any questions you might have. The Sergeant Park Playscape, we were originally intending to have a grand opening or an opening event on July 28th. We've been working with all the invested parties to push that back. When we were out there, this is our first Playscape, and just because of the drought weather conditions, the turf and the natural and native plants are not coming in like we hoped they would have. So we want to open the first natural Playscape under the perfect conditions because we have intentions to do more of these, and we just didn't think it was our best foot forward on such a nice grand facility. So we're going to reevaluate late fall, and it even could be early spring next year, but we want the turf to take on, and we want this to be in its pristine condition when we open the first one. I'll tell you that I was there this weekend. It's already getting heavily used, so I don't know if we'll ever have the perfect condition because the kids are already there just running up and down the facility. It's been a great improvement for our system. So nothing this Saturday.
Nothing Saturday,
Nope.
so I can take that off my
You sure
calendar.
can. Nothing on Saturday. We've worked with all the parties, and today's your first announcement. Just to recap, we had a great farmers market event. Thanks to the entire board for supporting it, either here and letting us go forward with it, or also being out there. I can't give you exact numbers, but if I had to make a projected estimate of how many people came over, in talking to Glenn Lyons, they've been averaging 30,000 during the heat. I'm guessing we got a third of those people to come through our event. They were steady, nonstop. I know, trail maps by the thousands were given out. We give out all kinds of free passes, but we had great turnout and great feedback from the public asking us for again next year. Staff already has ideas how to pull it off again next year. we will do it, but it's one of those events that, could become stale after a while, so we want to reevaluate it every couple of years, but we have full intentions of going forward next year and doing this again, so. I do want to thank all the staff too, because it was very hot, and they survived yet another special event this summer, did a great job.
Yeah, and I would just like to say, I thought the staff did a remarkable job. Friday, there was nothing on the bridge. I live right there, and of course, I look to see what's going on all the time. And Saturday morning, it had just bloomed, and I was able to watch all day until noon. There was just a tremendous crowd, and all of the things that you had out there on display, and I heard several comments on, oh, there's so many things for kids. I didn't know we had X, or I didn't know we had Y. So I thought it was very informative for the public, and you just couldn't have done a better job. I was really proud to be a member of the park board.
Thank you. Means a lot.
And I had a lot of fun too.
I think our next big campaign, I know Jen's listening out there, will be, I didn't know you did that. We hear that too many times, and we're trying to get the word out there.
It was interesting.
There's much more that we can bring next time around too. So, I just want to follow up with the last update here tonight, is the proposed sponsorship policy update. The Park Board does have an ad hoc committee that's met several times, I think, to discuss ideas of how to generate new revenue, generate what's next, and how do we be in front of the next budget reduction. And one of the areas of focus has been, is there an opportunity for a sponsorship program? At our last meeting, we had a firm come in just to talk to us about a local firm that has a local presence, I should say, in Des Moines, to tell us how this kind of a relationship could work with their firm in the city. It was just more discovery, if anything, and I think it was a great discovery meeting, and the ad hoc committee directed staff to go back out, do some further research, including other cities in the Midwest as well as larger cities in general, to see how their sponsorship program works, and also try to gather some of their RFPs to see how they went about this, because they wanted to be very transparent in this process to say, even though we have some exemptions, this board, I don't know how long ago it was, but Ann was probably here, that you proposed to the council, and they accepted your ordinance change to allow you to not go through the city procurement rules when it comes to sponsorship agreements, to give you some more flexibility. But I think that the ad hoc committee was correct in saying, let's make this a very transparent process as you move forward, just because of the ability this will garner a lot of attention, whether it's the media or the neighborhoods. So we are working on that, and we're going to get that research done, hopefully between now and the next meeting, and get that all the way through. And last but not least, there's no questions on that? I think Cindy would like me to point out that we had a great opening at Bright Grandview, and I want to thank all of you that came out last week. Mrs. Bright was very happy. I do want to point out that we had just a very small committee to put this together. Nicole Wilson from our team was not here tonight, but Suzette should have a lot of applause from this group. She made all the place setting. She kind of organized us. She got her connections to help us to market this. So it was a great event, and we're just excited it's going to be at that facility.
Well, if anybody's out and about, they're serving breakfast and lunch, and I've been up there a couple times since.
How's the food?
It's good.
Good.
And the place is beautiful. Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, any questions for Ben about anything? Okay, good report, Ben. Are there any announcements or reports from anyone, or comments about anything? Sort of our catch-all last call for
I move we adjourn.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.